You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Tasty Trade. You take the unbeaten path. You root for the away team. You wear shorts in winter. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. So why wouldn't you trade with a broker that lets you go your own way? Tasty Trade. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose. You trade. Chart moves with hundreds of custom indicators. Stare at the candles till you see them in your sleep. See it, click it, trade it on mobile, web, or desktop. Supported by a trade desk that knows how traders think. The data, the tools, the knowledge. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again here on the old network, commencing our broadcast week here once again with everyone's favorite bi-weekly options extravaganza, known around the globe as the Option Block, or what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THE, OptionsInsider.com, as well as from the network upon which so many of you are just mainlining these days. Man, we're kicking off final month of the year. Crazy, hard to believe. There's a lot of things in motion here. Maybe we'll deal with some of those a little bit later on in the show here, because it's time. We have to give away our pro trading credit, all kinds of stuff going on here on the show, listener. So a lot to get to. Of course, if you like what you hear, this show, anything else we do, throw a like, a star, a comment, a rating, a review, whatever your platform lets you do. All of it in aggregate helps new people discover the show. And, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you want to check out more content beyond just what's available on the regular network, which I get is already a lot, then theoptionsinsider.com/pro, the place to go. Welcome to all the new folks who've joined us in the subsequent to Thanksgiving arena. Welcome to all of you folks out there. A lot of fun stuff to go on here towards the end of the year. Speaking of fun stuff, we always kick off this show in fun style. It is our kickoff show for our broadcast week, listeners, so we like to have a little fun, because I am joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW, as well as by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. And we're coming into the final month of the year. That means we are pretty much coming down to it, listeners, in our 80s wrestling trivia game. Uncle Mike has a pretty commanding lead. I haven't crunched the numbers yet. I don't know if it's feasible for the greasiest of meatballs to catch him at this point. I will crunch them later to see. Obviously, with only a month left, you're talking at most 4 points for the meatball. Is he within 4 points? I don't think so. But I will go check to make sure. But nonetheless, let us commence that segment. Let's see if the meatball can draw to a close, or if Uncle Mike shall continue to pad his already significant lead. will, as we kick off the segment here, I will draw both of your attention, gentlemen, to our show chat here. Well, you will see I have determined what you are playing for in this year's game. Last year it was a legit 80s style vintage but remade new version of G.I. Joe style Sergeant Slaughter, which to me is the apex of Sergeant Slaughterdom. I was thinking what would be fun. It is a wrestling themed thing, so something belt themed would be cool. Those official belts from WWE are pretty pricey, somewhere in the $500 to $1,000 range. I don't know if I like you guys that much, but I did go out and procure from WWE 2 items, and you folks will have a chance to choose. The winner will have a chance to choose both replicas of my favorite belt from the 80s and indeed today. It is the Intercontinental belt, the IC belt. We all know the working man's belt out there, the cool one, held by a lot of people like Ultimate Warrior and a bunch of other names you've all heard of out there, making headlines again today, so maybe we'll get to in a little bit. But you folks will have a chance to choose between a cool replica, easy for me to say, replica title you can actually put on your desk. It's desktop size, but it's full leather, it's metal, it's pretty hardcore. I was checking it out myself before the show. It's pretty cool, so if you don't choose that, I don't mind keeping that for my desk. And the other one is a not quite full size, but pretty damn close IC belt, full metal belt buckle. You can actually wear as a belt, so you can go to a wrestling event or whatever you choose to do. Maybe down in Texas, you go to a rodeo, I don't know. You slap that on your belt, and now you're the IC champion. I will admit, I maybe gave that one a trial run when I went to the Survivor Series recently. I may have been rocking the IC belt as my belt buckle. It was enormous, set off, metal detectors everywhere, but it was worth it at the end of the day. So I did test it out to make sure it was legit, and it is indeed legit. So you two will choose from one of those 2 things, whoever the winner may be, as we keep on rolling into today's Name That 80s Wrestler. Speaking of the IC belt, it is also the subject of our question today because the longest reigning IC champion of all time until very recently, Meatball already buzzed, the longest reigning IC champion of all time until very recently was an iconic 80s wrestler. Yes, that record was held since the 80s. It was just broken, I think, a few months ago by a large German man now called Gunther, who now is the longest reigning IC champ. But he overcame the long-standing record of this 80s wrestler. Mr. Meatball, who am I talking about?
He's the honky tonk man.
Yes.
He's the honky tonk man.
Yes.
He's the honky tonk man. He's the honky tonk man.
I saw an image of him just yesterday randomly. Someone's put it up there of him appearing at LA Comic-Con. I won't say he looks exactly the same, but he is committed to that gimmick 30, 40 plus years later. It is impressive how long he has been rocking the honky tonk man gimmick. All right, so there we go. The Meatball closing 1 point closer. I will put it in here. 1 point for the Meatball for honky tonk man. I don't think that gets you within striking distance, but we shall find out as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where like they're having some interference issue. We'll try to sort those out there behind the scenes, probably because Uncle Mike is in the mobile office today. We shall see. But, of course, it is the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there, listeners. And if you were hoping for another Uncle Mike super green day, not quite. At least not yet. If we all know the past is prologue, this market's going to turn green at any point now. Right now, the S&P hanging out, listeners, a little bit north of 45.5, 45.66. Still off on the day, off about nearly 30 handles, or about almost 2/3%. It looks like we did dip a little lower, down to a little bit shy of 45.5. So we have rebounded from those lows of earlier in the session, but still down about 0.6% on the day. We have, let's see if I can get my markets back. There we go. All right. We have the Dow off about almost 0.25%, and the NASDAQ off almost a full percent, about 0.95%. And we all know we can't leave small caps in the dust anymore because they're kind of just marching to the beat of their own drum. And that is the case again today. Small caps up nearly a full percent. So almost the polar opposite of NASDAQ out there. So again, another crazy market. Kind of depends where you hang your hat, what kind of day you're having. or at the very least, how much red you are experiencing for most of them. All this kind of vacillation means VIX is up, but up slightly from our Thursday show. When we kicked off the show, it was at 13.25. It puts it up about exactly half a point from where it was on the Thursday show. VVIX, so the vol at about an 89, up about 4 points. VXX 17.33, down slightly, about 0.15 from the Thursday show. UVXY at about a 10 even, down about a tenth of a point. It's going to break that 10 handle, then you know what happens. Reverse split time, listeners. SVIX 34.33, up about 0.2 of a point. And UVIX was at about 1760 when we kicked off the show, down about 0.2 a point. That's another one where you just re-rack it and it's going to move 5 handles. It's just a crazy beast. All right, a lot to unpack. The greasiest of meatballs, he is our winner today. So we will start with him as I attempt to ferret out his interference issues. Mr. Meatball, sir, first off, are you having, let's see, I will, there we go. How is that better for you, sir? How's that?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
yes.
Mike, we're getting some.
Mr. Meatball, first off, if you have any enduring memories of the one, the only Honky Tonk Man, A. B, if you have a vote in which of those prizes you would prefer, have at it. And then C, if you have time, what's catching your eye in the market, sir?
I think I'm going to go for the replica belt over the belt buckle, as much as I love a good belt buckle.
The belt buckle is pretty sweet. I can't attest to it. A little bit of a big thing to wear when you're sitting down, but pretty cool nonetheless.
Yeah, no, it looks really pretty awesome. I'm excited for either, for Mike to get. And then, I remember they had this like honky tonk single that he tried to came out with, this honky tonk a love thing. I don't think he actually knew how to play the guitar, which is kind of funny. And I know that he used to use the guitar mostly as a prop to hit people over the back with. And that his guitars were always loaded with like some sort of powder to make the effects better. And he had some really good feuds. And then later in life, after he was no longer IC, he was partners with Greg the Hammer Valentine. And they were, what was the name of that tag team? It was
Rhythm and Blues.
Yeah, Rhythm and Blues. And they were, the Hammer could not have looked more miserable in that outfit than dressed as Rhythm and Blues, because this was a guy that built his career on being a hard-nosed grappler, and they've got him dressed up as, like an impersonation of an Elvis impersonator.
It was an attempt to give a man who famously had no gimmick some gimmick, and I don't think it worked.
No, that was his only gimmick, and man, that guy just miserable. He had some really good feuds with like Jake the Snake and the Ultimate Warrior and all kinds of people. He was that good mix of being both cowardly and aggressive at the same time, which is what you really want out of a good heel.
That is true, sir. And what is catching your eye out there in these crazy markets?
Yeah, as you said, we're seeing a big rotation. The Mag 7, the mega cap names, they're getting sold, but money is not leaving the market. More money is entering into small caps. It's entering into biotechs. It's entering into retail. So XRT is up over 1% today. The biotechs are up almost 2%. The Russell 2000 up 0.75%. But the NASDAQ 100 down 1.1%. Why? Because those mega cap stocks are being rotated out of. So you're seeing NVIDIA down 3%, Apple down over 1%, Amazon down. So it is a rotation day. They really did try and dump the market, but money isn't really leaving. It's primarily, like I said, kind of rotating around into other names, notably the Russell 2000, which of the major indexes has the most ground to give up, right? And this is what I've been kind of noting. You've got the NASDAQ within a couple of percentage points of its all-time high, the S&P within a few percentage points, the Dow within a few percentage points. The Russell 2000 has tons of room to rally. So we could see this rotation last for several days because, yeah, it's had a nice run. But if you look at where the Russell is relative to, even over the last, it was higher on September 1st. It was higher on August 31st. So it is the one major index that has, I think, a lot of room to potentially move higher. And that's part of the reason why I think you see money moving into it.
That's something we've been pointing out for a while. Not just that, small caps march to the beat of their own drummer, but look at a lot of the names we highlight on this show who I think, fair to say, in segments like the Odd Block, fall in the smaller side of the market, usually outside of the Magnificent Seven. Most of those names we talk about saw their best days of this year around early to mid-February. February 2nd was the apex for a lot of those names, and they've done nothing but sell off for pretty much the rest of the year. So once you pull the Magnificent Seven out of this market, the story becomes very different. And a lot of those names, you're right, are out there in the small caps, and they could potentially have some room to run to the upside. Speaking of room to run, this guy, he's running all over these here United States. He is in the mobile office again. He is none other than Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, our runner-up today in our wrestling extravaganza. Uncle Mike, sir, can you hear me out there in the mobile office? And if so, A, what are your enduring memories of one honky-tonk man? And then B, what's catching your eye out there in the mobile office in today's markets?
Well, the honky-tonk man, I think we've talked about him before. My favorite memory of him is kind of like when Jimmy Hart wanted to try to ban the DDT. And I remember he was passing out T-shirts. He was running it like a political campaign. Ban the DDT, but he'd always add to it. But it's not because the honky-tonk man is scared of it, though. He wanted to make that perfectly clear. The honky-tonk man and Jimmy Hart, when they were feuding with Jake the Snake, they were not afraid of the DDT, but for the good of the sport, it's too dangerous of a move to have in the World Wrestling Federation. So ban the DDT. That's probably my favorite memory of the honky-tonk man. In terms of these markets, it's funny that Mark mentioned the small caps. One of the things that in stock portfolios that I have for clients right now, the ones that are behind the S&P, I've gotten emails. I actually had one about a week ago on this exact topic. Why is this section of the portfolio behind the S&P? And when looking at it, I had said we had went through it. I'm like, well, the Russell's not beating the S&P this year. Right now, we have a market to where it's really not been a lot more than the Magnificent Seven on the year this year. And so when that actually happens, what's going to happen is that you are going to have rotation days, as Mark described, and we're having one of them right now. The other exposure that we do have for some long term is the MDY or the mid caps, and that's also not performing up to the level of the S&P 500. So it's not always just the S&P. There are other things too. Bonds are selling off a little bit today, not a ton, which could be expected. It had such the rally last week, but for the time being, the Russell is the star of the show today.
Uncle Mike, did we lose you, sir?
Yeah, so the Russell's the star of the show today.
You think your machine likes to keep muting you, sir? You're muted again somehow. I don't know what you're hitting in the mobile office there, but you're somehow muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can. Whatever you hit before, don't hit it again.
All right, got it. Yeah, so right now we're at a stage to where the Russell is the star of the show at this point. It'll be interesting to see if that continues, because people typically want to have market exposure somehow and somewhere, and that's where it's going right now.
Oh, and also before you mute yourself again, sir, as the current leading contender in our 80s wrestling trivia game, you have your choice of prizes, both IC belt related, my personal favorite belt, probably both of yours as well, maybe up there, definitely top 2 or 3. You have your choice, sir, of an awesome IC, legit, hefty, pretty epic belt buckle. You will have to supply your own belt, of course, a belt that is hefty enough to support that, or the IC replica belt that you can put on your desk, or maybe, I guess if your wrists are kind of big, you can maybe wrap it around as a wristband or something. I don't know.
You know what? I think I'd go with the IC replica belt, honestly. The belt buckle's cool and all, but I don't know if I'd really have... I'm not much of a belt buckle kind of guy, so I'd want the replica belts, I think.
Go to a rodeo near you. You wouldn't stand out at all with the giant IC belts. Replica belt buckle. All right, I had a feeling that would be the cool one. So unfortunately, listeners, no sweet IC replica belt for my desk is going to go to one of these jabronis. I was just looking here at how that legendary title run came to end. Of course, it was none other than the Ultimate Warrior who took the belt off Honky. One of the reasons why IC belt is my favorite to this day. Ultimate Warrior, not a popular guy, not a great wrestler by any means. And the rumor is that Honky said, there's no way I'm going to wrestle that guy for more than a few seconds because that guy's terrible, probably injure somebody. So that's why he legendarily squashed him. Ultimate Warrior came out and just squashed him in like 30 seconds and won the belt. And the rest, as we all know, is history. Let's see what's popping off in the markets today, listeners. Is it a historic day for the markets? The answer is pretty much no. Unless we have some really kind of epic, unprecedented turnaround out there, listeners. Probably not going to see historic numbers out there in ye old market. As witnessed by Exhibit A here, listeners, the VIX. The VIX right now struggling to make 250,000 contracts. Not quite there yet. 247,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV, 701,000. So back down about 230,000, 240,000 from its recent ADV high of around close to 950. I think it got up to like 946, something like that. So coming in quite a bit. Again, it is coming into the tail end of the year. A seasonally interesting time for volatility and indeed for the markets. Also not exactly the busiest time. So one of the reasons why we're seeing that ADV coming in. A SPY, though, saying, you know what? Hold my beer, kid. I'll put up some numbers today. 5.15 million already for SPY. The ADV 7.42, so SPY seems like it's going to hit its ADV in a couple hours. So impressive out there for SPY. The S, similar notion, 1.85 million. So the S on the bit of the old rampage out there today. The ADV about 3.25 million out there. I just did my favorite test, listeners, just for fun. I don't know why. I'm a glutton for punishment. To see how many of the top 20 in the SPX right now are not expiring today. You know the answer. I know the answer. I run this test anyway, just because, like I said, I'm a glutton. The answer is 0. They all expired today. If I expand it to the top 40, I see 14,000, I should say, of the June 3,500 puts going up today. Those aren't expiring today. Also, the June 3,300 puts going up 10,000 times today. So I see 2. I see the D's 45 half calls expiring on the monthly. So that's 3. A March 8,000, a lot of the March 3,700 puts, that's 4. Looks like it's some April 3,500 puts, 5. And then we got June and another D's. So about 7 total in the top 40, which again is a little more than I would expect. Usually it tops out around 5. But there we go, listeners. A very 0-day heavy, shall we say, day in the SPX, which again is the day that ends in Y for all things S. Small caps, like we said, they are on the rampage today. They are once again marching to the beat of their own drummer. If you listen to the Meatball, then maybe you think they are poised for a little bit more action towards the end of this year as well. They are following suit right now. Almost 1.3 million contracts on the tape already. Small caps, just banger day again. The ADV is 1.6 million, so they're already almost there. So, yeah, just a banger day out here in small cap land. The Qs, not far behind, 2.75 million. Again, that's obviously more than small caps, but you look at their ADV, also they're pretty close to their ADV as well, of about almost 3.5 million, 3.45 million. So percentage-wise, IWM and the Qs closing in on their ADV fairly rapidly. Let's see if we can say the same thing for the rest of the market. Is it somewhat of a banger day in the single names? And the answer is kinda. It's actually kind of surprisingly active out there. You'd be forgiven for thinking it'd be a little bit of a sleepier start to the week. Maybe a little bit of that red this morning woke people up a little bit. Maybe it was just the love for all things IC belt and honky tonk, man. Who knows? Either way, it cost you 269,000 contracts to break into our top 10 today. That's fully 100,000 more than we've seen some show days recently. So that's nothing to sneeze at. And it's a little bit shy of 100,000 less than what we've seen it top out at either as well. So we're kind of right in the middle of that range, which is respectable. And that gets us to number 10, which is Coinbase. If you're intrigued by all things crypto, I encourage you listeners, Uncle Mike aside, to check out the Crypto Rundown coming up later today. That show's been on the rampage of late because crypto has been on the rampage. Bitcoin breaking 40K this weekend. So if you got a little bit of crypto holdings in your back pocket in one of your portfolios out there, don't tell Uncle Mike. That's looking pretty good this week because that Bitcoin tide does tend to lift all the boats out there. So everything's pretty much up. Your Cardanos, your ETHs, your Solana. Solana on the rampage of late. So a lot to unpack. And of course, Coinbase following suit as well. Coinbase coming in at number 10, 269,000 contracts, up 8 3/4 or 6.5%, trading 142.5 right now. My goodness. Bitcoin just strapping Coinbase to its back and saying, look out above, here we go. My goodness. Number 9, AMD. All this on the rumors of this ETF. Nothing's happened yet. Just the whiff, the whisper of this ETF is enough to send these markets into a tizzy. Hey, I'm not hating. I've got a wee bit of all this stuff in my back pocket, so that's all looking pretty juicy these days. But it makes that show also a lot more exciting than back when Bitcoin was drifting shy of 16K and ETH was flirting around mid-1500s and Solana was going to die. Certainly a lot more fun for that. But still, yeah, these are some impressive moves. AMD, number 9, 270,000 contracts. So the chip zone coming a little early today, listeners. 118.40, off nearly $3 or 2.5%. So chip-related names can sell off. It is possible. And we're seeing it today in AMD. Number 9, 270,000 contracts. Number 8, we're already over 300K. That's an impressive day. Lately, it's sometimes taken us up to number 4 or 3 to break 300K. So number 8, that gets us to Uber, a name we haven't talked about on this show. I can't remember the last time. They're getting added to the S&P, so that's going to usually do it. It's going to pop the stock, and that's what's happening today. 270, up about 4 2/3%, trading $60 even. Looks like this is a record high for them, or pretty darn close. Let's see. They're at $60 even right now. They hit 60 2/3 back. Guess when, listeners? Oh, February of 2021. What was happening then? I have no idea what would possibly be driving stocks to such a high. So Uber back up at their meme stock highs. That's after hitting their lows summer of last year of about, looks like $22 and change. So actually 21 and about a third. So they are closing in on tripling from July of last year. So an impressive little turnaround here for Uber. And again, good for number 8. So maybe we'll be talking a little bit more about Uber. That'd be interesting. Number 7, our old friend Palantir. For a lot of you, it's the budget AI play. 347,000 contracts today. Looking a little bit cheaper. Do you want this one to come in a little bit so you can buy some more at a lower price? Well, then today is your huckleberry. $18.50 is where Palantir is trading, off $1 3/4 or nearly 9%. Looks like some analysts are raising questions over an Army contract. It seems like there's always issues with contracts with these guys. They have contracts, they don't have contracts. The contracts they have are awesome. Oh, wait, they're not worth as much. That's been kind of the dance with this name forever. Apparently, that's happening again today. Good for number 7, 347,000 contracts. So if you wanted a little bit of a cheaper bite at the apple for Palantir, and you missed it back in the 7.5 days back in March, yeah, we were talking about some selling puts and everything else back then. And then, yeah, earnings happened and bam, off to the races. Has not looked back. But here you go. A little bit cheaper bite at the apple today. Almost 10% discount for you out in Palantir land. Number 6, keeping it in the crypto-related names. My goodness, I haven't talked about this name in a while either. This is Marathon Digital Holdings. Ticker symbol, you know it, you love it. It's Mara. 373,000 contracts on the tape today. When we've done polls in the past on our Crypto Rundown program and asked you folks, what is your preferred vector for getting a little bit of crypto exposure on the options side in your securities account? A lot of you chose BITO, but also very popular. I think the number 1 choice was actually Mara, above even Riot Blockchain and everything. It was Marathon, then Riot came in. I think BITO was somewhere around number 3. So it's interesting. You folks don't even want, and then Coinbase might have even supplanted BITO as well. So you folks not looking for one-to-one correlation, which is interesting. But Marathon, 1462 up nearly a full buck, or about 6.7% today. And again, good for 373,000 contracts. Yet another example, listeners, of the rising Bitcoin tide dramatically lifts all the boats in that arena out there. So there are a few better examples of that than Bitcoin. It truly is the lifeblood of that space. Love it, hate it, I don't care. Even crypto fans hate it because they think it's nonsense and everything else. There are better projects. Whatever your viewpoint is. Rising Bitcoin gets a lot of people excited, and all this other stuff happens as a result. Number 5, it is Microsoft. Man, Microsoft, they are coming for it today. 368 and 3/4, off nearly $6, about 5 3/4, or about 1.5%. I suppose when you look at the NASDAQ, it's not a true surprise that they're selling off today, but they are outpacing the NASDAQ to the dark side. So again, if you're looking for maybe a little bit of an AI discount, and Palantir, or perhaps the owner or major investor of quote-unquote open AI, how open is that? Then maybe a discount on Microsoft, what you had in your Christmas list. Well, then Santa brought you a gift early today. Microsoft number 5, 377,000 contracts. Number 4, keeping it in the tech land, it's the Amazonians, off $2.50, or about a 1 2/3% today as well, trading 144.60. They're coming in at number 4, 392,000 contracts. Since we like A tech names, let's keep the party going. Number 3, it's the Fruit Company. 486,000 contracts. They're selling off today as well, off 270, or about 1.4%, trading right around 188 double. So obviously, they still are a long way away from where they were not too long ago. They broke the 170 handle to the dark side, threatening 190 still, even with today's sell-off. So yeah, they've come a long way as well. Of course, everything has post-Powell. Well, I shouldn't say everything, but a lot of the big names we talk about here on the show. Then number 2, talking about AI. Can there ever be a discount in NVIDIA? Well, today is the day, listeners. Off nearly 3%, or $13.50. So if you wanted a little bit of a deal on Palantir or Microsoft or on NVIDIA, you got a smiley face today. 454.11, again, off $13.50, or nearly 3%. Good for the number 2 spot, 716,000 contracts. And you know what the big dog is yet again. It is Tesla. Not even 1 million contracts today, though. 962. Of course, they unveiled their Cybertruck. All sorts of drama around that thing as well. You can't even get it yet, even though they had an unveiling and a release event. So all sorts of weirdness there. Hey, it's Tesla. It's only off $2.50, or a little over 1% today, which is nothing for them. Trading 236 1/3 today. And again, good for the number 1 spot, 962,000 contracts. In terms of earnings, you might be thinking, hey, stuff's kind of winding to a close, but you'd be mistaken. Got some names popping off this week as well, like a name you may have heard of called Neo before the bell. Tomorrow we've got you got Joanne Fabrics, everybody loves them. Campbell Soup, everybody loves them. On Wednesday before the bell, we've got Ollie's. I hear a lot about Ollie's yet. We don't have any really around here that I don't think so, but I hear a lot of people talking about Ollie's getting all sorts of closeout deals that are amazing or something like that. So if you have an Ollie's near you, maybe you love it. I think I first heard about it with our buddy Mr. Overby. They have them down in the south there, and he was talking about them. Vera Bradley, so if you love garish floral prints, then that's all for you. I apologize for you ladies who love them. GameStop, Thursday Dollar General, and Broadcom, and Lululemon. They of sheer yoga pants fame, and many more to come. Let's go out really quickly and hit on a couple out there. We got, obviously, updated for you folks, because we like you folks, hot off the presses from our friends at Orats. Updated earnings move results, and earnings season reports. Let's talk about Dave & Buster's on the 5th really quickly after the bell. 43 and change is where they were when we ran this report. They were pricing in 4 1/4 in their straddle. In the past, they've moved 3.13, so fully a buck and change worth of extra juice in Dave & Buster's. Interesting. By the way, they're selling off a little bit today, trading a little bit shy of 43 right now, so they've sold off a little bit since we ran this report. Ollie's, the aforementioned Ollie's listeners, trading 74 3/4. They're pricing in about $6.50. In the past, they've moved 5 3/4, so right around $0.75 worth of more juice out there, which is interesting as well. Again, kind of speaking to the pattern we've seen now for a while, that more juice is the order of the day. What about Dollar General, Uncle Mike's preferred shopping destination for everything? High fashion, for food for his family, for auto parts, you name it. If Dollar General doesn't sell it, he wants nothing to do with it. They're popping off on the 7th before the bell. 134.70 is where they were trading. Get this, they're pricing in $11.30 into their straddle. In the past, they've moved about $8.50. My goodness, that's a lot. $2.80 worth of extra juice. That's a lot for Dollar General. Fascinating. Perhaps the game is afoot in the dollar store land. It's the game afoot in sheer yoga pants, 7th after the bell, 466.66. That's a lot of numbers of the beast out there in in Lulu. That's where they were when we ran this report, listeners. They were pricing in $28 exactly. In the past, they moved 33 and about a third. So $5 1/3 less juice in Lulu. That's interesting. They're one of the few names we're seeing out here bucking the trend, which that trend is even stronger right now, listeners. With 833 names reporting, our season stands now at 117%. So I thought we were going to come back closer to the mean there, but no, we're not. We're actually outpacing it again. We moved up from about 113% up to 117. Again, as I've been saying, a lot of these names have been outperforming. That's kind of just the narrative this cycle. So, wow, 117 is where we're coming in towards the end of the season. That's a little bit surprising to me. Again, if you want to see those numbers for yourselves, theoptionsinsider.com is the place to go. Meanwhile, we have to go on into our next segment. It is time to go into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the odd block.
All right, everybody, let's get weird, let's get wild, let's get whimsical. Before I unleash our Eye of Sauron, we had to go digging a little bit to find some fun stuff today, which is weird because it's a pretty active day. Let me first unleash the greasiest of Meatball. Mr. Meatball, you're always looking at some interesting paper out there. Any interesting or obscure, just weird paper come across your radar today you want to share with our folks?
Today has been a very index-heavy day. But you know, where we did see a pretty active. Are you going to do BBWI?
Nope, have at it.
All right, BBWI. That's Build-A-Bear Workshop. There is some pretty significant paper on the January 37.5 calls. They bought 30,000 of those today. You know, initially it looked like a sale, but then I realized no, they were just bidding them up. And to prove my point, Vol's up 3.4%. So you've got a big opening buyer of the January 37.5 calls for Build-A-Bear Workshop. Mark, you going to get Mrs. Option Insider a new Build-A-Bear for Christmas? Maybe that's
the plan.
What's driving
you
things.
Just ruined it. I had a perfect Build-A-Bear picked out. You just announced it to all the masses, and now I'll have to change my plan. I guess she's getting a replica IC belt for the belt buckle. I guess that's what every woman wants, right? So Build-A-Bear Workshop, yeah, you're right. Not a name we talk about a lot. Also kind of emblematic of the kind of day it is. You're right. Right now, listeners, Build-A-Bear trading $24.92, a little bit shy of $25 out there. So a little bit of upside, but also kind of is one of those weird days where they're seeing a lot of paper in single names. We're just not seeing a lot of, you know, odd block meriting paper. So we had to actually, I would say, go to let's go second tier and maybe even third tier names to find some interesting paper for you folks. Unless you want to talk about a lot of size call overwriting in some names you're familiar. That doesn't really excite us here. So we try to filter that stuff out. Get to some more intriguing stuff. So we're going to do that now, listeners. Let's go out to a name we haven't talked about in a while. This is PLTK Holding Corp, ticker symbol PLTK. This looks like a British gaming company because they have subsidiaries out of the UK, and UK House of Fun Limited is also one of their. So it looks like a British-centric mobile gaming, I'm guessing, trading around $8.50, off about 30 cents or 3.5% today. So not exactly a banger day for them. Not a great year either. A year ago, they were trading $9, so they're off right around 50-odd cents on the year. They did rally it, though, up to nearly 12.90 in July. So if you go from that high, they're obviously off a lot more. They have managed to rebound. They hit their low for the year back at $7.58 on November 9th. So in the last month, they've rallied not quite $1, right around 80 cents. So I guess if you look at it glass half full, the last month, not so bad. The last year, not great, especially if you consider from this summer forward, they've really gotten crushed. But it seems like, Mr. Meatball, somebody maybe is liking a little bit of some British mobile gaming, because somebody scooped this morning 1,250. And again, we had to filter down to some smaller trades to find things that were intriguing us, listeners. But these also sometimes can be interesting as well. Doesn't all have to be 50,000 lots. 1,250 of the May 12 half calls, they lifted the offer for 20 cents. The stock was $8.50, so $12.50. If I do my math correctly, that is a $4 out of the money call. They just paid the offer for 20 cents. 1,250 times. There are earnings between now and May. They are on February 27th, so they got a ways to go before the next announcement. Again, they're not paying through the nose. I haven't pulled up the strikes for this one. I have to imagine there might be some better choices between 8.5 and 12.5, but again, I haven't looked, so maybe this is the best choice. Mr. Meatball, what are your thoughts on somebody really swinging for some upside in PLTK Holding Corp, sir?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I don't love the play, lifting the offer, and to buy these mostly. And somebody came in and scooped 100 for 15 cents right after them. So they bought in bulk and they paid up. I guess if you know the stock is going to explode higher, it's not a bad play, but I can think of far better ways to express that opinion. As you said, earnings are kind of end of February, so this is an earnings play. I would probably rather buy the stock and sell those, or buy the stock and sell the 10s than execute that trade. I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah,
gotta be honest.
Not much to love. Not much to love about lifting the offer. You could have at least worked that a little bit, just made an effort. But yeah, a lot not liking the strike. I don't love any of it. But maybe listeners, maybe you love PLTK. Yeah, I think if you bought the stock and sold those and the stock exploded, I think you'd still be pretty happy with that trade. So yeah, this is a hard one to love, but that's why we do the show, listeners. Well, let's keep going. Let's roll out from PLTK into COUR Laboratories, Inc., ticker symbol CLB. I don't know what kind of laboratory they are, but they're out of Amsterdam, so maybe that gives you some ideas. Maybe they're in the mind-altering substance arena. $18, pretty much even, off about a dime today. It's not a huge banger day for them. On the year, a year ago was trading about $21, so they're off about $3 there. And of course, if you go up to their high, which again, surprise, surprise, looks like they hit it twice actually this year. They hit it first time right around February 8th, so we all know early February was a good time, I should say. Then they sold off down to about $20 in March, and they tried to rally it again, and they got up to about almost $28, $27.94 in August. And then since then, they're right back down again. So from almost $28 to 18, taking $10 off the top. It's been a rough few months out here for COUR Laboratories. Whatever they're making out here, folks not loving it, apparently. Yeah, I'm just looking here to see if I can see any more data on them. I don't see anything. But what we did see today, listeners, is somebody coming in once again, Mr. Meatball. I said they're trading 18. This is just, I guess, nonsense call day, I guess. This is what happens when we filter down to the tertiary subjects of the odd block. People who skipped the first few chapters of Natenberg. Somebody coming in and scooping a similar size, so maybe it's the same person. 1,223 of the CLB June 25s. So these are $7 out of the money calls. Before we were talking $4. Now we're talking $7 out of the money calls on a $18 stock. And once again, lifting the offer, saying, give me that, give me all those calls. 85 cents, I'll take them all, baby. Stock hasn't budged. There are earnings on February 7th. You're probably going to get another one in before June expiration, maybe. I just, I don't know, Mr. Meatball. If you love the PLTKs, you got to really love the COUR Laboratory June 25s for 85 cents, sir.
Yeah, I mean, they must have some sort of drug announcement. That's the only reason. That's the only reason.
Is that even the reason to buy these? I don't know. Buy something.
I don't know.
Sometimes the fun names are the most fun. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what this thing ends up doing. But I don't particularly love the I don't particularly love this play. I think there are probably better ways to express your opinion. The March 20 calls are only $1.15, $1.20. That's a better play. You're buying options that are ridiculously wide. I just don't. I don't get it.
Maybe we set our filter for nonsense today, Mr. Meatball, because we got one more before we get to Uncle Mike in the mobile office there. And this is another good one. Let's go out to Coursera Inc., ticker symbol COUR. This is an online course provider, trading $20.36, up about 15 cents, about 0.75% today. On the year, a year ago, it was trading 13.25. So they're up over $7 on the year. So a nice run for them, about 54%. Been mostly pretty much straight up. So a good year for Coursera. Never talked about them before on the network. Looks like they have a subsidiary in India as well. So intriguing. This one, like I said, their year has been on the rampage. They've already rallied from 13.25 to 20.33, Mr. Meatball. And somebody's saying, you know what? They ain't done yet, because they came in this morning, maybe the same customer, because these are all in the same category at this point, and bought 1,001 of the June 30s, 3-0, so we're at 20.33. These are basically $10 out of the money calls, listeners, after the thing's already run 54% this year, and saying, you know what? It's got some sweet momentum. Let's keep the party going. Again, lifting the offer. Again, these are not liquid names, so I get it. You have to sometimes hit bids and lift offers, but it just makes it more painful. This market was pretty bad, 15 cents at 50. They said, we'll pay 50, 1,001 times. The stock was right about here. There's earnings on February 8th. Mr. Meatball, if you were unsure about the PLTK calls and you were mediocre on the COUR laboratories, you have to love these Coursera June 30, sir. Do you?
No, I don't love the Coursera. I don't love these calls at all. Is it just ridiculous out of the money call day? Is that what's going on?
I guess. I don't know. It brings a smile to my face. But yeah, I mean, these are all terrible.
I mean, it's just, what are you doing? I mean, I like to call them aspirational. That's the way I describe them.
Aspirational, delusional, insane, all adjectives that could apply. They also, ironically, apply to the uncle list of Mike's. So let's see what he's got cooking for us, listeners. From the mobile office, a little bit of the old strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the strategy block. Uncle Mike, we set you a pretty high bar. I'm not sure how you're going to top 3 absolutely absurd out-of-the-money call swings for the fences. But if anyone can do it, you can, sir. Especially from the mobile office. Not an easy task. What you got for us today?
Well, I wanted to talk about out-of-the-money calls today because that's one of my go-to strategies.
Perfect.
But
I set you up nicely.
But since you guys already kind of stole my thunder on that one, I'm going to talk about one that's, I think, very important this time of the year. And we're going to go with when to act and when to wait on taking action from the standpoint of taxation. So I had 2 clients that are in 2 situations right around this time of year. And ultimately, if the tax ramification of your move is going to be good, then you should do it this year. If it's going to be bad, then do it next year. So, for example, I have one client that he needed to sell some stock, or he didn't need to sell some stock, but on his business, he was taking an NOL, a net operating loss on the year. And so by doing that, he was in a situation to where him and his wife's combined income they're taking a loss. So they're definitely below the 80,000 mark to where they would need to be. And they decided to sell their stock at a gain before the end of the year. By doing that, when you sell a stock that you've held for greater than a year, longer than 365 days, you are in the long-term capital gain category. If your income is below roughly the $80,000 level if you're married filing jointly, then your tax rate on long-term capital gains is zero. So what this client did, he actually sold the stock. Well, he didn't do it. I did it for his account. We actually sold the stock and immediately bought it back. Now, it's beneficial from the standpoint that the stock was at a very low level. And so if he were to wait to sell that stock in a year to where he would have had to have paid capital gains on it, it would have been roughly a 15% hit to the tax man on any gains with which he had. However, in this year when he was taking a loss on his business, it made sense to raise the cost basis of that stock. Now, when you sell a stock for a gain and you buy it back right away, there's no wash sale rules. The wash sale means if you're trying to sell a stock for a loss and then take the loss and put for your tax records and then buy it back right away. For losses, that's not a good thing. If it is indeed a wash sale, meaning you buy the stock back within 30 days after you take a loss, then you can't take the loss on your tax returns. This doesn't apply because the wash sale doesn't apply to gains, only losses. Now, let's say it's going to be something bad. And by bad, not necessarily bad. I have another client that is looking to invest some money in his business, and he's had some stocks that have had a pretty nice run. Now, he wants to use some of that money to invest in his business. In his case, what he's going to do, or what we're going to do, is we're going to wait until January to sell the stocks because his income is not below the threshold. And by doing that, what's going to happen is we're going to postpone having to pay taxes on it for another year. So when he sells his stocks in January, he will incur a capital gain for a long-term capital gain. However, he'll be able to postpone paying it because of the fact that the tax is not due right away, and we're going to put it off by setting it up that way. Now, depending on how you're set up for taxes, you may have to pay quarterlies on that. It just kind of depends on where you're at. But the point is that have a plan on what could work best for your individual situation, because 15% really means a lot, in my opinion, especially when it's based on waiting and doing things at different times. And that is the strategy block, first one of December.
There we go, listeners. First one of December as we keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on here on ye old network, at least until we gather here together on the Thursday episode with the Flow Master. Really quickly before we get to that, listeners, we are, of course, putting out a new fun question of the week for you folks right now. We'll pay off last week's one in a little bit here. Maybe we'll get to that on Thursday. But right now, our question of the week just went live right before showtime, listeners. And, it's that time of the year. It's the final month of the year, so it's time to break out your crystal ball. First up, let's talk about vol. Quite simply, where do you think VIX will close at the end of the year? Gave you 4 ranges, so north of 15, or the 13.5 to roughly 15 level, or the roughly 12 to 13.5 level, or below 12. Mr. Meatball, we will start with you, sir. Which of those 4 ranges do you feel VIX will fall in at the close of the year, sir? And then B, what are you keeping an eye on until the Thursday episode with the Flow Master?
I think there are decent odds it could fall below 12. I do. But, the odds say I should say 12 to 13.5, so that's going to be what I say.
And what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of the week until Thursday?
We've got non-farm payrolls, GameStop earnings this week. I want to see this rotation. I want to see how this plays out. Do we get some continued selling, or is this just going to be a couple of day event? because that is what I feel is going to be kind of the big driver for the day and the driver for the week. How long is this rotation going to last? And when do the bottom buyers start? When do the dip buyers step in on names like NVIDIA and Microsoft and Meta and those names? So that's what I'm watching.
There you go, listeners. Fascinating stuff. Let's go back to the mobile office now. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what is your answer? Where do you think VIX will close end of the year? North of 15, 13.5 to 15, 12 to 13.5, or below 12? And then B, what are you keeping an eye on until the Thursday show? And then C, since we're coming up against it, where should folks go if they want more Uncle Mike goodness? Maybe they want the mobile office to come to their house.
Yeah, for sure. It's like the old bookmobiles that they had back in the 80s. The Uncle Mike mobile will have.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll be bullish. Let's say that we're going to have a Santa Claus rally. Let's go below 12. What the heck? Seeing as I'm not a VIX person, why not? Let's do whatever it takes to drive the S&P up, whatever it takes. In terms of what I'm watching, wanting to see if we're continuing to get buyers in the bond market, along with the fact that are we going to get a Santa Claus rally, and will it come early? Is Santa Claus coming to town? If you are looking to get more Uncle Mike in your life, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. And if you are looking for a financial advisor, check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. Set up an appointment with me. I'll give you a call, and I promise not to rant on the great injustice of how Florida State is not in the CFP Final Four. I think that's horrible.
That is a huge injustice. Mike, you know that. I can't believe we didn't hit on this until right now. What a load of hooey. What a load of hooey.
Horrible. So
terrible decision making.
I hope just to make people feel better, I hope Michigan blows out Alabama just to make it so that's like, well, they wouldn't have beaten Michigan anyway. That's kind of what I hope happens. But we'll see. Either way, I feel bad for Florida State. I think that's garbage.
Controversy over college football. What a surprise. Film at 11. This has been going on for as long as college football has existed, listeners. Very stupid system that they have still. Even with the playoff system, it's still very stupid. We won't get into that. Instead, we'll talk about Honky Tonk Man. That's far less, I should say, controversial. And Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. If folks want more meatball goodness in their lives, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, head over to optionpit.com. We're putting out valuable content every single day across multiple newsletters that you're going to want to read. So head our way, optionpit.com.
There you go. Check them out, optionpit.com. And if you want more content of the audio variety, stay tuned. We'll be back in a little bit. If all you pro folks just hang out, and for everybody else listening on demand, hit next on your device of choice. We'll be back with the one, the only, the hotly anticipated these days crypto rundown. What madness is going on in the world of crypto? Let's find out together coming up in a little bit. Then we're back again with our usual array of content, listeners, until we're back again on Thursday, another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Tasty Trade. You take the unbeaten path. You root for the away team. You wear shorts in winter. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. So why wouldn't you trade with a broker that lets you go your own way? Tasty Trade. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose. You trade. Chart moves with hundreds of custom indicators. Stare at the candles till you see them in your sleep. See it, click it, trade it on mobile, web, or desktop. Supported by a trade desk that knows how traders think. The data, the tools, the knowledge. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.